This week on the Old School RuneScape Update, Jagex's membership survey raises questions about old school monetization going forward. We unpack the survey, community response, Mod Pips' response, and discuss what could have gone better. Also the reality of surveys and pitfalls of community rules. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 61, recorded Saturday, January 18th, 2025. The Raging Survey. Hello everybody and welcome back to the first episode of Old School RuneScape Update for 2025. Sirion had a bit of a vacation at the start of the year, but you're back.
I am back.
You're back, all fresh, rested, rejuvenated hopefully.
Yes, absolutely.
Ready to get thrown into the deep fryer?
Oh boy, it's we picked an interesting week to come back.
There's multiple ways to look at everything that happened this week, and there's correct ways and there's incorrect ways of looking at it. And what I'll say off the top, because many folks are probably aware of what this episode is going to contain, it is going to contain discussion on the membership survey, as well as the reward post regarding Varlamore: The Final Dawn, plus also the rollout of the League's 5 Raging Echoes rewards, plus the run energy changes, which are pretty much a footnote at this point, given everything that's happened in the last 10 days in the community. But nonetheless, full show notes can be found over at update.show/os. We also have a friends chat in-game that you can find at BitsBytes and a Discord at update.show/discord. So shall we begin? Do you want to open this off? Do you want me to open this up? What do you want to say to start talking about this bomb known as the membership survey?
Oh boy. This is such a hard topic to talk about because there are a lot of motives and a lot of different perspectives to take on this.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is that I want to prefix is that, I think we should all want Jagex as a company to make a lot of money, because that means the game gets to live for longer and then we get to play it.
Yeah, and
so
I just want to caveat that, because there are people who will disagree with that because they don't believe in the virtues of capitalism and making money. But the unfortunate reality is, from that perspective then, is that that's how every big successful company works in 2025, wherever you're based, whether you be in the UK, US, or even in, countries that used to be communist like Russia and China.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you really get away from this, the game needs to be run, people need to be paid. So, if a game stops making money, unless you find some way of crowdsourcing it, and I know there's been people suggesting that they should cancel the membership and then use all of the money to just buy Jagex. Totally realistic option there.
That would first require the investment firm to sell the company, and that would then require an orchestration beyond anything we have seen in the gaming world of folks gathering together and, putting the requisite funding together for it, and it would not happen that way. So
look, it's a tough topic, and for me, one of the main things that makes this so difficult, and I want to this is more of a conclusion and something I should wrap up with, but I kind of want to put it in the front, because I think it's really the most important thing, which is that ultimately I think what this conversation between the community and Jagex has shown, and I mean, conversation is giving it a lot of credit. It's more of a outing back and forth at this point. um, is that Jagex lacks the capabilities and the vocabulary to talk to the community about this in a way, in like a good way, but the community lacks the maturity to have like a proper conversation about this. And those two facts together are, in my opinion, worrisome. Like it's pretty amazing to me in a sense how much influence especially old school community has on Jagex and the way they do business.
Yeah.
And I think acting the way that they have is a sure way of making that go away.
And I have
More so than the survey itself.
Yeah, and that is the thing that worries me the most about this, because I need to be 100% honest with our listeners, for people who aren't aware. I play other games out there that have monetization models that would make the RuneScape player, and definitely the old school player, be running for the nearest fire exit, let's just say. So the way I see these sorts of things is that, oh my God, Jagex is actually rolling out the red carpet and having a discussion on monetization with the community. And to be fair, it is 100% within the realm of a business to run a survey, especially not too long after they were moved off to a different investment firm to be owned by them, to figure out, how exactly can we monetize our products, right?
Yeah.
That does happen.
Look,
And
the most common, like, there's a few ways of doing this, like market research and all of that. What you see often as well, especially in the mobile market, is that you literally just do A/B testing. So you give different people different prices or different options, and you see what the influence is on their behavior. The problem is that you're typically at this point actually affecting user behavior, which is problematic because it might actually have impact on the bottom line.
right,
So,
and you can't do that with RS, because the RS community will pick up on that very quickly. Whereas if you're doing this on a mobile game, then that's just 100% par for the course, right?
yeah, exactly. Yes. So, and basically what they were trying to do with this survey is, you're never going to get perfect data because it's always artificial, but basically sort of pretend that a player sees a different option than they see today and what their response would be, so they can sort of figure out what their bottom line impact would be.
And
that's really all this is.
And with that, you get to the point where you say, maybe the way this was presented wasn't exactly the best way. But again, let's put the other pair of glasses on and say, would you rather have, like a small percentage of the RS population that's renewing membership be presented with some of these other things, and see what the uptake is on that? And that would also get into the community, I think, in a similar way to what the survey did. And I think the reaction to that would probably have been worse.
Yeah, it's just not in Jagex's interest to actually go and put this out there. It takes development effort and all of that. So, I think this is like what they did is not out of the realm of reasonable ways of experimenting.
of companies interacting for that and whatnot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now I do think, and I think this, like, I think, whenever you have a conversation about this, and that has been the hard thing when discussing this on like various Discord channels, is that there's always people, like, it feels like there's two camps, right? Like, oh, Jagex done goof, or oh, the community should stop whining. And I don't think it's either of the two. I think, for example, that the impact on the community, I mean, is totally predictable and was in a large extent preventable. or at least they could have contained it. And
Could they have, though, given the relationship
yes,
with the content
yes,
creators, the Reddit, and just how the internet community works around old school? Could they have, really, you think?
yes. So maybe this is from a somewhat naive standpoint, but in an ideal world, I would have, like, if I were in charge of community management, right? And this came on my plate, like, hey, the investors told us we have to do this. Find a way to make this palatable to the community. Because that's ultimately you're doing damage control. You're already 1-0 behind if you have to do this survey, but all right, I think we can contain the damage. And I think the best way of doing that is by basically taking the moral high ground and be as transparent and honest as possible.
What about the fine print that was in the first news post talking about the survey? Specifically, the one that says the survey is about learning, not making decisions in a vacuum, and no final decisions have been made. This research is a starting point for discussion, not an announcement of changes, and will continue to keep you informed and address concerns as they arise. Like that, this was literally in the fine print of the post that came out a day before the survey went live.
I know it's not the same. It's not the same as, let's say, a video of either a community manager or even better, maybe even the CEO himself being like, look, guys, this is where we're at. We need to do business. Monetization is important. And we want to make sure that we come up with an approach that is both good for us and good for you. So that is why we're testing these things. We know that there's going to be things in there that, look funny. That is because it is a randomized survey with different things. So the options it generates aren't necessarily sensible. For the people who do get the survey, please just fill it in to the best of your ability. And also we would like to ask you to not post screenshots of the options out of context. No. And of course, there's going to be people that do that anyway. But I think But
are you saying that this would work for people who get the hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube?
No.
Making a business out of shit stirring here.
Okay, that will still happen. But the whole point with Jagex being upfront about this and almost sort of showing a vulnerability is that you sort of get ahead of it, because ideally where you want to be at is you want to get to a position where everybody who starts shouting about this comes across as a little bit of a douchebag, because they're now shitting on the studio who's just trying to make ends meet, right? It's all
that's how I viewed this entire thing from the start.
Exactly, but the majority does not, and I think in a sense Jagex has kind of passed this to themselves by, like I said, not taking the effort of being as transparent and honest about it. And even if you look at the CEO post of, it's still full of doublespeak, and we know why, right? I know why. This is how business is done. Whatever, but
and the reality of it is, and this is an unfortunate reality for all RuneScape players, is that Jagex is on its second investment company. First, it was Carlyle Group, and I don't remember the name presently of the second one that they were sold to. But typically, when companies get passed around between investment companies, it's because those investment companies are looking for growth and profit out of said company. So that is Jagex's primary goal right now, is to just keep the profit as it is, or continually keep inching it upwards and upwards.
But I mean, that's the goal, right? But it automatically, whenever it comes to monetization, and especially with the recent trends in the games industry, you almost always get an antagonistic relationship between community and the company. And that is, in my opinion, completely unnecessary, because ultimately, both parties in this actually want the same thing. because okay, one of them wants to spend a good time and the other one wants to earn money, but both of those need the same thing, which is a good and healthy game which people enjoy playing for a long time and are willing to spend money on, right? So a a good product is good for both like the consumer and the actual seller, because
Yeah.
because that's the whole thing, right? Like when you sell something, you're exchanging monetary value to something else that is of equal or more value to you. That's
So
the whole underlying idea of a transaction.
yeah. So my question then with that, which of the games stands to benefit Jagex more from monetizing it further? It's Old School, right? Because Old School right now just has the subscription.
Um,
And I'm
this is a
speaking
more
purely
complex.
on a profit based level here.
th- this is the problem. Yes, you're right. In some degree, but the Old School community is also funny in the sense that it is full of refugees from the MTX overloaded RS3.
And that's why then we turn to things like Project Sonaris. Which
Exactly.
which we did find out, by the way, over Christmas break, that if you look at the hiring postings for Zenaris, it says that it's a content creation angle, and then you combine that with money, and everything makes sense.
Yeah. So, it it's weird, and this makes it so hard. Like, Old School is, how can you make more profit out of it? And MTX, like microtransactions, is really just not the way to go. But then
But what
what, right?
else, right?
So it's a completely natural question to ask. Like all of these questions in the survey are completely natural.
Yeah, like they don't charge you extra for playing leagues when, RS3 had Fresh Start. You had to make a separate account and pay them more membership for it.
Exactly. So, all in all, I think it is in part on Jagex to get to a point with the community where it's not an us versus them conversation, because it isn't, and it shouldn't be.
So,
And that, I mean, I would say the community should also behave like that, but it's much
yeah, okay,
harder
that was
to
going to be my next question, is that
but you can't impact a large group of people. You can't really change their behavior. The only thing you can do is nudge them by giving them the right, you know, by how do I say this? I think you can get a lot of behavior out of it just by adjusting your vocabulary. Like this even works
I think you are
in
being very optimistic on how this would work with the RuneScape community based on everything I've seen on social media this week after this survey went through.
I mean,
Like I don't like I
part of this is to blame on the
can you just tell the story of I think it was Satisfactory, the game that you always hold up as the benchmark for community management. Can you just tell the story about that, and so people kind of know where you're coming from on your ideal view of community management?
So Satisfactory, which is a game by Coffee Stain Studios, and to me that's sort of the golden standard of community management. They are very upfront about the development process, but also about the mistakes they make. They were also, for example, very transparent when they were going to increase the price of the game because it was coming up on full launch, and they even were like, "Hey, the game is going to go on sale before that, so this is the right time to get it." But I think like the main example where I had is where basically the developer said, we done goof. Like we actually made a mistake in how the game works. We caused a lot of grief. And just taking like just that mea culpa moment is and the genuine the sense that it was genuine, right? Because that's the whole thing you get with these posts from Jagex, the follow-ups on these survey. It doesn't come across as genuine because one, it's a verbal piece of text that two, doesn't really have strong commitments on what they're going to change and do better.
Yeah, because it's not like there's no commitment behind it as good as the text sounds. Like
exactly. You kind of want that video, right? You kind of want that personal touch. And the nice thing is that if you are on a habit of doing this, right? Like they are still doing like weekly like check-ins basically with community management where they would give all of the updates and all of the transparency. And for a long time I thought old school was in the same position, especially around updates, but there are moments like this one and some of the poll questions that are phrased like a little bit funky and combined. Like there's some stuff going on there that I don't know. I find it really hard. But ultimately I mean social media really shows the worst aspect in people.
Yeah,
And
I think even if they did, what you're describing here, I still think they would have got the blowback on Reddit and throughout, the wider internet, YouTube, social media, and in general on this.
yes, well, okay, because if they had done this as a one-off, if there had been a culture where they are transparent
Fair.
and there were like a
Okay.
heads up that this was going to
Yeah.
come and an explanation on how this came together, and sort of like a deep dive in how like in their methodology without affecting the final results, right? Take the community along, and this comes, like I said, social media gets the worst out of people, but I think I still ultimately am optimistic about people, humans in general, and I think if you treat them with respect and with maturity, you can expect that back. Not from everyone. There will always be people that are shit posting. There will always be trolls, and there's an above average percentage of trolls on Reddit, and we all know that controversy causes clicks. So,
and that's my biggest thing with this is that if this is really as big of a deal as everybody who was showing up at the in-game riots and was posting on Reddit each and every day was, if this really is that big of a deal, everybody who is that concerned about it, go to the Jagex website and just cancel right now. That's the only way to tell them. That's the only way to tell them is by ending subscriptions and making a noticeable drop in the amount of subs after something like this happens, even if it's only temporary.
Yeah, but I honestly don't think that that's going to happen. I think it's
no. I think the community is too addicted to the game to have that happen.
I mean, that's like that's
seriously.
That's one way of putting it, but I don't know. Like the whole like I'm gonna just repeat myself, so I'm gonna try and summarize my final thoughts. I think Jagex could have handled this better. I think they could have been more upfront, more transparent, and also, as ModPip says in the final message, there's some things in the survey that outright should not have been in there.
And I don't think we touched on it, but this survey was carried out by a third party not connected to Jagex.
Yes, though the videos were made by Jagex, from what I could tell, in-house, so they probably had quite a lot of influence on it, but whatever, right? There's just certain things in there that I think outright should not have been in there. Enhanced account security.
I laughed at that one.
I mean, there are certain platforms, right, where something like that makes sense. For example, if you are like a high-profile journalist, you might want to pay for extra security features on your email inbox because you are just a high high value target for hackers. And the same with content creators, right? You can imagine that content creators might want additional account security features on their RuneScape account because they're like everybody's going to try and and get into those accounts because they have a lot of value. But still, like the baseline should be that it's secure for everyone.
Yeah. Which we have right now, I think, in a good way with Jagex accounts and proper two-factor authentication and passwords. So
I mean, you could set something up like actual, very strict monitoring on things like login attempts and all of that stuff. And that is not cheap to set up, and that is not something you want on all accounts. So
maybe that's like a content creator account or something.
Exactly. There's a reason that it's on the survey and why people might pay for that.
Yeah. Another fun one was the logout timers in particular, because, that was something that already caused some controversy, I think, 2 years ago on RS3 when they were considering adding that to Premier Club, whereas, hey, we got that. It's an extension on Old School. Just set that to 15 minutes and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So there are things on there that, you are right. There are things on there that shouldn't have been on there.
Shouldn't have been on there. I think Jagex could have been more upfront about it. So
especially the ads in a game you're paying for, right? Because that was also another thing.
All in all, I think Jagex dropped the ball on certain aspects of this survey.
Agree.
I do think that the community response is probably a little bit overblown, especially if you view this in the context of, yes, they want to add like ads to RuneScape, but only for Netflix now has a subscription where you have ads, right? Where the actual thing itself is cheaper.
And
it's a very reasonable option to see,
right. But that also bothers.
Yeah,
and that also bothers me as well, because there's tons of other services out there that provide a good service that you pay for that just don't need to do that. So
yes. So yes, but this would be a cheaper subscription, right? So let's say you pay half price membership, but you get ads and a shorter AFK timer. Would you be interested in paying for that?
Yeah, and I guess then that this all comes to the point that maybe there was some friction on the recent membership price increase.
That doesn't help, And again, like I said, Jagex dropped the ball on some of these things. The timing isn't great. The content isn't great. The upfront messaging isn't great. Lots of I think all of this, if you looked at it, you could have predicted that the community would go and be completely angry about this. So I think that was missing. So the preemptive damage control from Jagex side was missing. But I think especially now they have rectified it. Mod Pips has shown a message. They have heard the feedback. I think at this point
it's time to it's time to turn the temperature down.
It's time, exactly, right? And there's still people who are like, oh, this is not enough. What more do you want?
Oh yeah, I have since yesterday. Whenever I open up YouTube and there's a video on this matter, if that comes up in my YouTube feed, I'm clicking do not recommend this channel again, even if I enjoyed that person's videos before. I'm sorry, that's where I'm at with this.
It's at this point, I think, Jagex has moved in our direction now. They've said, okay, we get it, we heard you. At the same time, people are... Sorry, a comparison just came up in my head. The community is currently just acting like a union. Where they just stick to that amount of. I didn't get to send
Christmas cards out this year because of that.
We don't want MTX ever. There's just no way we can.
There's no way you can. Right,
no,
there's
exactly.
no way you can guarantee that when it's a private company, and even more so when it's a private company owned by its second investment firm.
Yes, so I think the most important thing here right now is that by continuing to complain, you're basically showing yourself as community to be a unreliable negotiation partner. Let's call it that for this reason, right? You're basically
Thank
showing
you
that
for
you're gonna
finally getting to the point I made on Thursday about this. Thank you.
So that is to me, the whole thing. I think both parties are guilty to the fire, and I think everybody is worse
Who's
off
guilty
because of it.
more?
I don't think that is the right question to ask.
I'm asking you that question. I want an answer.
Yes, and I'm not gonna answer it because I believe in what we call blameless cultures.
If you had to pick one.
No, I'm not. I refuse. Because answering that question is not beneficial to anyone. That's just pointing fingers.
Listeners, do you think you should answer the question? Let us know in the comments.
I will not be. This is one of the things I will not. What's the word? Buckle to pressure on. You can peer pressure me all you want. I don't think this is this whole discussion of whose fault is it is exactly the same problem as that we're having with the MTX discussion. It goes down the same alley. And does it help us get to the point of how in the future, if we want to talk about monetization, do we do this in a way where we can all be on the same side and all talk about this in a way that benefits us all?
Well, I think based on my reaction, it's clear who I put the most blame on, and how I feel about money in general. So, if anybody needs clarification on that, you can have that next week. But I think it's clear for me. Anything else on this? I think that
I could keep talking. I could keep talking about this for a long time.
No,
but
I mean,
I got my point across.
Like I could just sit here and I could wait for you to do that, but I don't think that would be.
I will say one thing is that personally, the survey doesn't worry me. I think there are things on there that really should not be implemented ever. But I also think that the survey would have shown that, and they would not have actually
right and
implemented.
But the difference is you and I have the trust in Jagex, and we read the fine print, and that was the end of the story for us, right? So,
I suppose yes,
yeah. But there was also a discussion this week about another poll that was going to go into game.
Oh boy!
And this is on hold now. Rewards for Varlamore, the Final Dawn quest, Delve Boss, and the Slayer Dungeon rewards. And
so funny how quickly Reddit forgot about how angry they were about the cape when the survey came out.
Yeah, because that's really what it was. It was mainly the cape that was the sticking point on this, was it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just start with that. The Eldritch Veil was supposed to be the new best in slot magic cape for the foreseeable future after this comes out. It is a direct upgrade off of the imbued magic capes from Mage Arena 2, and now we're just in a holding pattern while Jagex reevaluates everything. And this was going to provide a little bit more. It was going to provide an extra percentage point in terms of magic damage boost. It was going to provide more magic attack bonus. But as it was initially written, it was going to have a -2 prayer bonus on it. And all of these things put together with the community view, it seems, and this is the sense I got, that best in slot cape should come from wave-based combat, like the Inferno cape. Push the pause button on this for the time being.
But was this going to be a best in slot cape?
Right, and see, this is what I didn't get. I was trying to do a comparative between the math on this. I was trying to figure out, is the damage boost you get from going imbued magic cape to Eldritch Veil similar to the boost that you get from going from Fire Cape to Infernal Cape? I know the Infernal Cape in most situations is just a plus, a straight up +2 extra damage when you factor things in. But based on the way, elemental weakness works and magic damage bonuses, this cape could, I think, fit into a different category where it becomes more or less than that. So you're right. Was this really going to be the new best in slot magic cape? It was going to be for a bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was the be all and end all like Inferno, right?
Yeah, I'm just looking. Like, if you look at like magic damage, the imbued capes are still the same. And this, like, what surprises me is what it says here: a stop cap between the imbued god capes and your eventual magic cape. The thing is, the magic cape is not actually that great of a item, right?
No.
So I like this whole discussion I don't really get. So I guess in a sense it might have been a best in slot cape for that reason. If
Well,
it's
it
better
was
than
because
the
because it's better than the imbued and it's the best we got right now. And I think that's what people view as best in slot.
Oh, do they maybe mean a stopgap between the imbued god capes and your eventual magic cape?
Yeah, that's what I took for it, is that there would eventually be something else down the line.
Yeah, the magic cape being all capitalized seems to imply it refers to the cape of accomplishment, but also it might also be like an unreleased magic cape that is to be released in the future and will be the best. I don't know. It's really not well written, this post, in that respect. It's really quite ambiguous. But yeah, look, I don't know. So the one thing that I got out of this, right? The whole community was saying, "Oh, we can't have the best. The best in slot cape must come from a wave-based PVM encounter."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is never a rule that was established by Jagex.
Right, and I think they would handicap themselves if they said that. And maybe RS3 kind of enforced that too, because we had the cape from Inferno, and then we had Arzak capes, and both those were always the best in slot in terms of cape. So maybe that's also informed things a bit too.
Yeah, so I think but like it's not a hard rule, and the community sees a pattern, thinks it's a rule, then gives rejects an idea because it doesn't follow the self in sort of deduced rule. And there's sort of two ways that Jagex can go. They can sort of go back and kind of follow the rule in the future, I guess. And now the rule is de facto a rule, even though it's not a rule designed by a game designer. It's a rule by, I don't know, democratic vote?
Dictatorship.
Not even that, right? It's people complaining that it doesn't match their particular, headcanon.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's a dangerous path. That's a dangerous path for old school to go down.
So I think we've seen this a few times before.
Yeah.
In polls, and specifically polls that have been rejected, these are the things that for some reason.
Doesn't it feel like it's always? I know we're talking about Rathma and Sandma as one of the things because that was PVM related.
Yeah.
The piety changes is another one. But there was also another case, I think, with something Varlamore Batch 2 as well that we talked about last year on this that finished. It was the dragon thing for Huey.
Oh, God, yes, exactly. Like, Huey, it looks like a dragon, should be a dragon. Right now it's a dragon, right? Like, that's the kind of things where I'm like, I don't know if that's really a good motivation for decisions that Jagex made. So that worries me most about this discussion. And I'm going to be honest,
that's the through line on this.
Even with all of my experience in leagues, I am still not a high-end PVMer. I would not have any clue what these stats and things do. So I'm gonna have to take the community's word for it that there were problems with this cape, but I don't like this. I think there is a good reasoning why Jagex made this decision, right? Um, where does it say so? Who explain our original reasoning? Um, since the Doom isn't like the Inferno or the Mage Arena with a defined end goal and
Yeah.
accompanying reward,
Yeah.
we felt it was important to have tradable uniques that are more obtainable at higher levels, so there's a real economic incentive for skilled players to
And
push
that was
themselves.
another thing, is that players insisted this be untradeable.
Yeah, so untradeable rewards work really well for like things with like I say here, defined end goals, right? Like the Inferno is really not meant as a piece of content you do repeatedly. Same with the fire case. You can do so through Slayer, but it has like limited additional benefit to do it more than
Yeah.
once. It's really designed as an account milestone, right?
Yeah, and you see
Same
that with
with
those
someone
being two of the combat mastery points in this league.
exactly. The mage capes that you currently get are very similar, right? Like you don't really go and kill, those bosses more than once. Once you have your imbued cod capes, that's an account milestone. Now, this is designed as not an account milestone, but actually a boss similar to, I don't know. Let's give a good example. The Desert Treasure 2 bosses, for example, right? In terms of difficulty, it's probably up there.
Yeah, you unlock
You're
it and you can
meant
go back to it if you want.
Exactly. You're meant to go and kill those bosses repeatedly. And that is only really worth it, especially at these high ends, if there is a, reward that drops from it. And they decided that the cape is a decent reward. So far, best in slot capes, and this is one thing I will grant them, right? Think of best in slot capes for all of the different styles. For melee, it's the
Fire
fire cape
cape.
and then the inferno
Yeah.
cape, right? For magic, it's the god capes and then the imbued god capes.
Yeah.
And for ranged, it's the accumulator, assembler, and all of that stuff that you sort of upgrade.
And then the final one comes from Vorkath.
No, the final one comes. It's actually Diana's quiver.
Oh, right. Now it is. Yes.
Yes. Which is an interesting one, I feel, because and this is already where you see the rule of the best in slot item needs to come from a wave-based minigame. The Colosseum isn't meant as an account milestone. It's meant as something you can do repeatedly because it actually has multiple.
It's got reward checkpoints throughout, so that even if you don't make it all the way to the end,
rewards.
you're gonna still benefit.
Exactly. Now I'm just double checking. It does look like the quiver is actually untradeable. So in that sense, it is. Okay, it's a guaranteed drop. Okay, interesting. Okay.
So they have a point, and you see where the confusion came in here, right?
Yep, I can see where the confusion came in. That's fair enough. I think the best way to see it is like the Eldritch Veil isn't meant as the best in slot cape.
Yeah, and I feel like that was clear.
Exactly. So I would have actually gone back. Like they decided to make it untradeable. I would have rather gone and like let's make it an alternative to the God Cape, where, for example, it has like maybe like a negative prayer bonus, but like a bigger damage boost, right? Where or the other way around, even make it give an even bigger prayer bonus and no damage boost. And like something interesting there is possible. where it has niche use cases, but I don't know.
And I
I
mean,
don't know.
it doesn't matter really at the end whether what the stats are of the Magic Cape, the Thrall upgrade, which I think that one was actually kind of interesting, as well as the Avernick treads and all that. I don't think that matters at this point because this is just on hold until they come back with another proposal on this. And
I mean, I don't know. Like, it looks like they're gonna keep the threats as they are. They're changing the veil to be untradeable. I think the one thing that we're waiting of ahead of the polls is what they're going to do with the thralls, or to replace the thralls. So yeah, they pushed back the stream. I think I saw that in Discord, right? They're pushing that back until they can finalize it. It's going to be interesting, but
yeah, I don't know that I agree that the cape should be untradeable, but here we are.
I kind of would like for them to make that a poll. Right now they're like, should we introduce a cape that is untradeable? Yada yada yada. Maybe they should literally add like, hey, here is the two options: a tradable and an untradeable cape. Which of the two do you want? That might be an interesting poll question.
Yeah, see where people are at. But I think based on the critical mass of the discussion prior to the survey this week, I think we know which way that would go.
Yes.
So,
now before we move on, because we've been talking about all of this, what is sort of your thought of this in general? So this is going to be a delve boss.
I really like the entire proposal on this, if I'm being honest, from top to bottom. I like the idea of the delve boss in particular because I feel like that's something that we really haven't done before, and it would be an interesting take on bossing and specifically the tie-ins to everything else around it, Slayer and whatnot, how that's mentioned at the end of it too. So I actually like the way this sounds, and you can kind of see that we're probably going to, experience parts of this during the final quest. And like you said, you'll come back to this after the quest to be able to replay it like you did with Desert Treasure 2 and maybe like we did in the last Varlamore quest with a Moxliotl. So that's probably the path that this is going. But overall, I was actually very interested in seeing the way the delve boss would go and the reward structure as it was proposed initially.
Yeah, to me it's interesting. Like they're talking about delve and calling it different than enrage, even though it feels like enrage.
And that's the thing as well. It'd be the old school's first foray into something like this, I think.
I think the game needs it though. I think I as much as I have appreciated all the mid-level content, I do think the game does need, another good piece of end game combat.
Yeah, didn't we talk about that on the year in review? How last year was, mid-level year.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we did give a voice to that because I know that's something you guys have said in the comments before, is that there's always the mid-level stuff. When are we getting high-level stuff like another raid or what have you? So
yeah, and I think this is. I would love to have another raid actually, but that's a topic for a different day at this point. With slight spoilers of what I've been doing in this long period of time.
Oh, we'll save that for next week, unless something else catches on fire.
Yeah, no. It's interesting. This is definitely not for me, right? 120 combat. This sounds like the time of content that is going to be perfect around next time Leagues comes around.
And there's your bit of a preview for where we go next week, and for our next segment on the show. The League's rewards are here, and we talked about these back in November. But oh boy, is this a list of known issues here.
Yeah, this was a little bit of a fire as well when this came out, because a lot of like the in-game models don't quite match the concept art. There were a bunch of things missing. Quality-wise, the update was quite poor.
But I think the good
And
thing about this, compared to the survey, is that we have a list of everything that is known and being investigated that has been fixed and will be fixed next week.
yep. What I don't see as a known issue here, which is interesting, but I noticed that some people saw there when they used the recolor on some of their combat gear, they lost a combat stats. So I don't know what happened with that.
Oops.
Yeah, that's a pretty big problem, right? It might even was it like the Virtus set or something like that?
Shit.
Yeah. People, yeah, exactly. So
it's just a cosmetic now.
yeah, no, exactly.
No, and obviously, given the value in place that armors like that sit, that is something that needs to be fixed ASAP.
Yeah, I think this is kind of unfortunate how, this is an update that it's so straightforward and yet it comes with so many issues. I
You
guess
really got to ask what kind of broke down here, because also,
yeah.
First meaningful update of the year. Well,
Yeah.
second. We'll get to the first in a minute briefly. But it's cosmetics for League, something they've done before. You got to wonder what exactly went wrong with this.
Yeah.
So
No, exactly.
But,
so
I hope it all gets fixed soon. But
also, did you see that they basically nerfed the experience of trouble breathing into the ground?
Oh.
Yeah. So it's shown as like a slight nerf, but like actually it reduces.
Did anybody use it for a main training method? They did.
Yes. It was and that's why they nerfed it, because like I think like the fletching XP you could get there was a little bit too good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
So
I can
now hey, trouble breathing was alive for some time and now it's gonna be back to death.
That was always one of the fun ones we did with our clan.
Yes, trouble breathing is a lot of fun actually.
Yeah, you just gotta have the right people for it. I know that might be sacrilege compared to what people like to do in game, but it is what it is. And also the first update of the year that shipped this year, the Run Energy updates.
Yeah, we discussed between the two of us. Here's a little bit of behind the scenes. Whether we should have a show last week to discuss this, but
that in the first portion of the Varlamore rewards would have been that, and we said, just save it for next week. It'll be fine.
Exactly. I think we've talked about the Run.
Yeah,
Energy
we talked about Run
before.
Energy as they were on beta. This is primarily the same. I think there's one small change in terms of regen on this. Factoring in agility level that they made after the fact that we didn't get to play with on beta. But I think the long and the short of this is that it enables skilling outfits to be something other than graceful.
Yeah, I don't know. I think like the biggest thing is that they made Run Energy degrade even less fast, right? Even slower. Which is good. My main problem is that this particular update was meant to resolve one particular pain point, which is in particular early game navigation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The problem is that by solving that, by making Run Energy last longer, you've also trivialized some of the Run Energy management and like high level skill based combat, things like Zoyana, right, where you're just running around the room all the bloody time, or some of the other combat encounters where continuous movement is important, so there was actual significant value to stamina potions. And by making this change, I feel they have also inadvertently trivialized that high level content. Now maybe not trivialized, but made it a lot easier. There's now less reliance on stamina potions. I mean, time will tell whether this is really the case. My thinking is if they had implemented like musicians and resting mechanics like we have in RS3, I don't think that's a big deal, because the only thing that really helps is navigation on the overworld, which in the high level was done by teleports anyway. So all it does is it buffs early game navigation, it solves that problem, and leaves all of the other things intact. So as much as I hate run energy, and I can't, I dread to go back to main game after leaks where there's infinite run energy, and ultimately, to give some, to balance out my feedback here, I don't think run energy is actually an interesting challenge to solve. Personally,
no, it's not, and it's why it became a non-issue.
Yes.
On RS3. It's just
look, I exactly, like, look, I don't care about this update, but I feel that if you're going in this direction where you're making run energy last longer, why don't we just get rid of it altogether? Like, this feels like it feels like going either with the musician and resting approach, and don't allow resting everywhere, only allow musicians if you want. That is sort of like a downgrade from what you can do in RS3, but I think solves all of the problems. That sounds like a quote unquote proper solution to only the problem you're solving. This sort of tries to tread the line of let's get rid of run energy, but also let's keep it because people
have their past investments in it. Yeah, exactly. And this also is similar to the same sort of discussion that we had with the Varlamore rewards about being locked into a specific path, because people have, investments in that, and this being the community centric game, you kind of have to respect that. And I think that's why we got the update we did, rather than something more bold like what you're talking about. Mic drop?
Mic drop, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I enjoyed this. When this came out, I did a herb run. It felt wonderful. It felt the same as it did on the beta. I don't think I need to wear graceful everywhere. I think it's good that also, speaking of preserving investments, they didn't tinker with graceful at all in terms of destroying the value on that. Though, if you have it, it's overkill now, and I don't think you need it as much as you needed it before. What do you think it does for that?
I mean, I think it's unfortunate. What might have been interesting is if they had given it like a new niche use. But
I think that would have been interesting, but could that have got over the community?
Oh, we will never know.
And I think that's the problem we keep running into with everything we talk about this week.
Yes, we'll never know.
Well, that's pretty much the end of the prepared remarks for this week on OSRS Update. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. A bit of a different hair not on fire discussion around the survey, I will say. I came into this episode... let me remind a bit. I came into this week with the full intention of not talking about the survey. And then I saw the way it was received by the community. I saw the way that Jagex handled it. And then I saw the way that the internet handled it. And I thought this is an opportunity for us to have an honest and open discussion about it, without sensationalizing anything, without inflaming anything one way or the other, without flaming at Jagex and without flaming at the community. And that was the venue I wanted to bring to this podcast for that survey discussion. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Let us know if you did. Do you have anything before we go on the survey or just this episode?
Nope.
Where we ended off? Okay. No. Okay. Good. I'm gonna treat that as a victory then, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, More can be found over at update.show/OS. You can also subscribe to the podcast there by just clicking on your favorite podcast listening service. We're on all of them: Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, and of course YouTube as well at youtube.com/@OSRS Update. Do like and subscribe there if you enjoyed this episode. It greatly helps the channel out. Let us know what you thought about it. That's good too, whether it be on YouTube, in the comments on Discord, or even in direct DMs for that. I talked to a few of you over Christmas about that, and just thank you for reaching out, and thank you for being a part of our community. Means the world to us. So thanks so much, everybody, for listening, and we'll be back next week for another episode of the Old School RuneScape Update. See you then, everyone. Take care.
Bye.